Joined by Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan in her office and a little bit of a different view of the office, so now we can see outside. I do wonder when do you pause and kind of look out, and what are the things that you're thinking as you're looking out onto James Weldon Johnson Park and just out into the city square?
I'm thinking what a beautiful city we have and how very fortunate I am to lead it. I really do. I love to look out this window and see all the things that are happening and just see the people walking around and looking at our skyline start to change. It's all fun.
Since we were last here, a couple of parks opened up. The Music Garden, which we had a chance to be at and talk to a couple of performers there, and to see that development happening just down from here. Is that finally reaching the vision that folks who have been advocating for parks for so long, that we're finally moving the needle on that?
Well, you realize, that people have busy lives and they don't always stay connected to exactly what's happening. I can't tell you the response we have had to that park. People are so very excited about it, and the visitors are just keep on coming. I mean, it is. I tell you, the other thing that I've heard more than anything else is that people are just over the moon that we finally have that complete connection all the way back around to Riverside, and that's Brooklyn and Riverside. So that's another really nice thing. But yeah, people seem to really love them. We're having tens of thousands of visitors every month to those parks, and that's the vision. I mean, the vision is to make this Jacksonville's front porch, because what is more beautiful than our river? We're a water city, and we love that most of the time.
Florida lawmakers are in special session again, and this week the focus is on property tax and property tax reform pushed by the governor's office. Set the table for what you understand right now about the proposal, as we've had a few days to kind of digest that 5 points that Governor DeSantis had initially put out late last week, I think.
Well, I'm very concerned about the lack of detail in it in terms of solutions for cities. It's not clear to me that legislators truly understand the foundational element of property taxes to city governments. I don't know one city or county in this state that won't have extreme financial burden, and what that means is burden on the citizens. It is property taxes that fund our cities. Largely, we don't even pay completely for public safety with our property taxes, let alone our roads and our sidewalks and all the infrastructure needs that we have in Jacksonville. So what we've heard from the council auditors is that our impact in the very first year would be $300 million. And that is something that would blow such an incredible hole in our budget that we would have to start really cutting vastly back on services. And frankly, I'm not sure how we would fund just our core services. I know they're talking about a trust fund in Tallahassee. Frankly, as an elected mayor, I'm not really thrilled about the idea of having to go beg for money from Tallahassee to keep my city running. And I don't suspect that leaders in other cities would be very happy about that. But we've talked about this so often, Rich, that it seems like every single year, while they talk about small government, this legislature gets bigger and bigger and bigger when it comes to taking over control from local governments. And look, we all are working hard toward affordability. I've been doing that since I came into office. We've created lean processes to make our city move better. We have kept our taxes so low here. We have the lowest property taxes of any major city in the state of Florida, but it's almost like those of us who have been the most responsible will be hurt the most by this. So I am really anxious to see what the legislature does with it over the next few days, but obviously, like many other leaders in the state, I have a lot of concerns.
You're going to be proposing the city's next fiscal year budget in a matter of a couple of weeks at this point. Just for context sake, if you're talking about a $300 million potential impact, and you don't have to lay out every budget detail, but what will you be projecting in terms of overall spending for the next fiscal year, just to put it into some perspective?
Well, this from my understanding would not take effect until
Correct.
Next fiscal year.
28 fiscal year.
So obviously you have to look out and to see what you have, as funding sources. But honestly, that's why it's going to be so interesting to watch what they do. I mean, I think all of us are holding our breath a little bit, because I just, at this point, we don't want to assume they're going to just pass this out as it is. We're hoping there's a little more reason brought to the process. But I heard somebody describe it the other day as it is like taking out the load-bearing wall of a home without a plan for keeping the roof from falling in. And I think that's a really great analogy. There's not a plan that I can see that would guarantee us the roof's not going to fall in. And I think having to count on going to Tallahassee with our hands out is really not a great thing. And you look at where we are on so many things already in this state. You know, I've mentioned before, you know, I know that, you know, property insurance in terms of availability has stabilized a little bit, but prices are still sky high. We haven't dealt with that. That's a real way to help people to save money. There are other ways in which we can tackle affordability issues without completely restructuring over 2 or 3 days how cities fund their budgets. So at this point, we are continuing to work through the mayor's budget review committee, listening to what the departments want in terms of enhancements and things like that. But I'm not clear at this point what we will do in order to fill that. We'll have to cut a lot of services. And I don't think people want that. I think you saw that during the last debate when the city council decided to cut the millage rate, which I'm sure they're thinking twice about now given what we're looking at. But I just, I don't know. We'll have to see. I don't want to make any assumptions that this is how it's going to pass out. Of course, you also have to keep in mind that there's going to be 60% of the population that would have to agree with that. We've already seen the police and fire unions come out heavily against this because they know it's smoke and mirrors to say that it's not going to affect public safety. You can say that. There's only so much money. And so at the end of the day, I think there's going to be a lot of things that would be affected if this goes into effect as is. And I would love to see what the full plan is. I hope they're going to flesh that out more for us.
In what ways can you use the bully pulpit of your office to campaign against whatever might ultimately end up in the ballot? And how far can you go with that? Or can leaders of organizations go? City councils, counties, things like that?
Look, I think once again, it comes down to being honest with the people. And I've done that so much in terms of our town halls, the ways that I reach out to people and actually dig through the numbers. Where we're doing our best to scour through all the numbers and see, you know, what specifics can we give to people. But I will absolutely come out and at the very least explain to people, look, this is what you may get, but this is what it's going to cost you as a city. We are finally in a place in Jacksonville where we have just achieved so much momentum. And this has the potential to really put the brakes on that. And I would so hate to see that at this point for our city. And it seems to me, why rush beyond for political expediency? I really don't understand the reason to rush this proposal through. Let's take a look at what are all of the possible unintended consequences of this. And I think that's what you're going to hear from the groups that come out against it. I think you'll see the police and fire unions come out against it heavily again. I think you'll see probably a lot of various groups that are going to be impacted by budget cuts come out against it. But at the very least, what we will do and what I will play a part in doing is educating our population in as much as I can to the fact that you know, there's only half of us that are homeowners in this city, about half. The renters aren't going to get anything back from this. It's going to drive up costs for renters. It's going to drive up some housing costs. There's just a lot of things that could happen as a consequence of this, and I'll do my best to get out into the community and educate people. I want people to save a buck as much as anybody does, but as we talked about when we reduced property taxes last time, you know, what do you get in return for that? It sounds good on the front end. What's the consequence on the back end? And I think there are folks that want to talk all upside because it sounds really good. And that's what you hear so often in politics. You know, it's super popular to tell people you're going to cut their taxes. You have to just talk about what the consequence of that is going to be, especially for a city like Jacksonville who has kept taxes in a relative sense to the rest of the state so very low.
Do you feel like you have enough time to begin the preparation process now, knowing that it wouldn't affect this next upcoming fiscal year, and what conversations are already happening to at least put a plan together? Because obviously hope can't be a plan. We hope that
certainly,
cities wouldn't hope.
But we have to see.
But how do you look at cutting $300 million?
Well, it's not possible without cutting services. So you could be looking at closing all sorts of amenities for people. And I don't want to get too deeply into that yet because I don't know what we're going to come out with. But certainly we're going through exercises of, you know, what are the possible options. We'd like to really wait and see what they come out with before we start to freak out about what we may or may not have. But certainly we'll have to do that, and we'll have time, as you said. We'll have time to do that once we see what the plan is. I have faith actually in the voters that when this comes to referendum, if they haven't come up with something that to me is more reasonable, or at least fleshed out to the point where we know how we're going to fund roads and sidewalks and potholes and those things, without going to Tallahassee. And look, also there's education. All of this it comes into my mind. You think about how teacher salaries are already the lowest in the country. There's just so much that you think about when you think about all the unintended consequences that could come from this.
As you've had conversations with fellow mayors, are they also kind of at least fleshing out the potentials? And is one potential at the local level raising the millage rate to try to offset any of that?
Now that I don't know. I know that the League of Counties came out with a list of how this would affect each county, and Duval was certainly among those counties because we're large. That would be affected quite heavily. But beyond that, I haven't heard anybody specifically talk about raising millage or raising rates or things like that. So, and I really don't want to go there. My whole goal, since I've been in this office, and I sound like a broken record, is we've tried so intentionally to invest in those things that will bring us the greatest return on investment, so we don't have to raise any taxes or fees. We haven't raised any taxes since I've been here, and so I want to keep it that way by investing in those things that bring more money back into our pockets. It's hard to imagine with $300 million hole what we will have to do, but I really don't want to go there.
The city has a longer strategy. It's the capital improvement plan, which is not general fund, right? How might this, have you thought through or talked through how might this impact things like the capital improvement plan, which funds things 3, 4, 5 years out? Well, and the revenue that comes in from that?
Yeah, the capital improvement plan is always, it can move back and forth. Those are things we'd have to look at. But as I said, we haven't gone too deeply into that yet because we want to see what the legislature is actually going to come out with. But look, Rich, this is such a huge hit that it's hard to imagine anything that won't be impacted by it. Let's be honest. I mean, regardless of what we do, it is $300 million for us it's a huge amount of money.
We're visiting with Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan. You referenced the trust fund that would be set up for communities. As you said, you would have to go ask permission to spend. How much money could be available to Jacksonville? Do you even know that?
Well, what I initially understood was that it was going to be a fund for rural counties or rural cities. So I really don't know. The bottom line, Rich, is it's hard to plan a budget around that. It's hard to plan. It's hard to look out past the next year when you're looking at having to go to Tallahassee. And the fact is, I was elected as the mayor of this city. I should be allowed to do my job. The council was elected to do its job in this city. We don't need Big Brother in Tallahassee telling us exactly how to run our cities, and that has been the effort year after year in Tallahassee to gain more and more local control over cities. And I just don't know how that comports with the whole idea of smaller government. It doesn't. We are the government closest to the people. We are the most responsive to what people want and need here in this city. And as I said to you at the very beginning, I'm not sure how many of our representatives in Tallahassee really understand all those things that we do with property taxes. And I sincerely hope one of the things that we'll be doing is spending a whole lot of time trying to, I wish we had more than a couple of days in the session. We're doing our best, but we need to make sure if we can't inform them before they push something out, that we can at least inform the voters by the time they have to vote on it.
I don't want to belabor the point, but we've known that this session was likely coming. Have there already been discussions with elected members from our area, House and Senate members, about educating them on the property taxes?
Yes,
so it's not just a short-term thing?
Those are all conversations that are ongoing. Okay.
So you are approaching your next budget address. What are you excited to be able to share with the community and with the city in terms of a new project, a new initiative, something that might be at least something that we've not felt or been impacted by that's coming for the next fiscal year that you'd like to see council adopt?
Well, look, we were already looking at diminished funds for this year, not only because of just the way the budget looks from the property appraiser's office, and we don't have the final numbers on that yet, but then you look at the $15 million hit from the millage decrease. So what we're really focused on is spending our money on infrastructure, a lot of core services. It doesn't sound sexy, but people love to have their potholes filled and their sidewalks fixed and those things. So that's really all the things that have been priorities will continue to be priorities. We're working hard on those initiatives that we feel like will create the best return for our citizens. And I think that so we'll continue to invest in those things that do that.
Obviously, infrastructure, to your point, isn't necessarily the most sexy thing, but it's the most impactful thing. Are there ways?
Make infrastructure I can't even say my own line. Make infrastructure sexy again. Man, say that 5 times fast.
You're gonna try to put on a hat or a shirt?
Infrastructure sexy again. Yeah, look, it is the main reason we have been successful at creating the type of downtown that we're now creating, because we went in and we really fixed a lot of the infrastructure. It's the main reason that we're seeing the economic development in some of the other areas of our city, because we fixed infrastructure. And I know, as I said, people may go, oh, that's sort of dull and boring, but it's really not. It creates the things that aren't dull and boring. It allows you to do so much that you haven't been able to do before, because we have sort of let the infrastructure fall down around us a little bit. And so now we fixed a lot of that.
Are there ways that the community can kind of see progress on those kinds of things? How is the government working to try to communicate that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would still, send people back to our transparency dashboards on all the work that we're doing in the city. We have transparency dashboards on just about everything that we're doing. And it gives people a real-time look at where our projects are and the things that we are on time and happy about, and the things we still feel like we have work to do on. But they can keep track of all of that when they go to our website and look at those dashboards.
One such project, and as we're approaching, or we're into wet season at this point with the start of hurricane season on June 1st, and we'll talk about cities' resiliency efforts and the like, but mitigation for flooding, and you've known them as well as we've all known them, some of the areas that are prone to flooding. The address that happened in McCoy's Creek now, with what has happened there, should mitigate a lot of the flooding.
Absolutely.
San Marco, that lift station, that looks like it's nearing completion as well.
And just in time for hurricanes.
Yeah, does it feel like we're finally, I hate to use the cliche, but above water now? And what might the community expect come this wet season in those areas?
Well, look, we are a water community. The river, the tributaries, the ocean. There are a couple things that are true, right? We are a fast-growing city, and we're going to continue to see extreme weather. We're going to continue to see those rising seas and things, so we have to be prepared for that. So that's why, you raise some of the bulkheads, you make sure that you're creating that type of infrastructure. You talked about McCoy's Creek. Really important to do those things that are going to mitigate that. And I think we are. We are getting there, but we're also working on planning and zoning changes that will help us to build in a more resilient way, that will allow us to not worry so much about if we're building in a floodplain, because we know that because we are on the water and that the seas are continuing to rise, we have to continue to keep up with it. And so I think that's why so much of the work we've done around the compound flood models and that give us a street by street view and things like that are so important. But we're now taking those things and we're putting them into our planning and zoning efforts to make sure that we're building in areas that aren't going to be underwater in a few years.
This community has something that not a lot of communities probably can say. It's actually not a government thing, but it immediately elicits in my head University of North Florida and the heat center that just opened up. So one climate-related thing, not government-related. In our case, in the city of Jacksonville government, a resilience office and a chief resilience officer. I almost feel like some education needs to happen there. I don't know how you feel about it, but it seems as though it's just an initial thought of one person whose job it is to look at the climate, but what actually happens within that office and what are they doing?
There's so much. Look, when I talk about the compound flood models, we are the very first city in the country to have these complicated models. As I've said to you before, FEMA is looking at our models because we have state-of-the-art models that allow us to model flooding street to street. That's a big deal for us as we move forward, and we'll continue to work on those. That's one of the things the Resilience Office has worked on. But beyond that, Ann Colanisi has been one of the people that I appointed to that planning and zoning committee, that we said, okay, we know that the seas are going to continue to rise. We know that the flooding will continue to be an issue for us simply because we are on the water. So we want to make sure that we're driving our future development to those areas which are more high and dry, and those areas which have the infrastructure that can support density and affordable housing. That's the other piece of it. So Ann has played a critical role in helping us make those plans. The highest places in our city are around transportation corridors. So we're trying to drive folks to look at that. That's great for all kinds of reasons, right? Because you want people to be able to take advantage of your transportation corridors. Trying to drive development there with incentives. We're trying to drive development toward areas of greater density like downtown for the fact that it's higher, and we can create affordable housing incentives through that as well. So because of state law, you can't place any restrictions on currently on the way that people develop. But what you can do is say, hey, you know what? If you'll develop in this area, we'll let you go up on the height, or we'll let you do some things that perhaps you weren't allowed to do before, to create affordable housing in those areas and to create more density in the areas where we want to see that growth, as opposed to perhaps places there, oh, well, yeah, I guess you can technically build there, but they're probably going to be underwater in 20 years. See what I'm saying? So that's what we're working on now. Ann's doing that. She's also played a very big role in this new food study that we're doing. That's normally something that has been left to the state and federal government, and primarily food decisions are that venue. But at the end of the day, what we can do to create better affordability for our folks in terms of food insecurity, we can do by getting all of our providers from farm to table together and say, how does the food system work? How can we make it better? How can we make it less expensive for people? And that's one of the things Ann's been very, very involved in, and will continue to do so.
When do you get the final report on the food study? What have you heard so far based on the work that's happened?
Well, so far what I've heard is that people are just thrilled to be talking. It's one of those things, we've talked about this before, but for so long Jacksonville has just sort of spoken in silos. This group over here is talking about this, and this group's talking about this, and now we've got everybody together. That's really, if you take all along the steps of the food chain, and I think that so far people just seem thrilled to be getting together to talk through the issues. I don't know exactly when the report will come out, but I know that they're in the process now of trying to make sure that we come up with the best plan we can.
And do you put a plan in place in this budget cycle if it were to require some additional spending, or would it be just more coalescing around bringing together groups in a different way, perhaps?
Yeah, I think it really has more to do with how we want that to look. What is the most efficient way? How can we support our urban farmers? What can we do to create more situations in our city where we don't have food deserts? What can we do to make sure that everybody in Jacksonville has the food that they need to thrive? And I think that's really creating a system to make sure that those folks that are involved in those things can thrive in what they're doing, and we can make sure that we're not a city that is food insecure, as we many times are now.
We're early into the Atlantic hurricane season. You've lived through many of these. We've seen quiet seasons and very active seasons. And early in the season historically is a time to brush up on preparations. How much are personal preparations, and how much maybe is that overall messaging like a behavioral science sort of lesson, where literally you're dealing with one individual, their needs, their plan, and maybe lack of planning?
It's really every year that we see go by in Jacksonville that we don't experience a direct hit. We haven't had a direct hit here since Dora in 1964. Not a direct hit since 1964, but look at all the issues we had from Irma and Matthew. Again, let's talk about why that happens, because of all the tributaries we have, because of the river, because of the ocean. I mean, we're always going to be a vulnerable city that way, but it's hard to get people to take it all seriously when you haven't been hit for so long. What I would say to people is, you're hearing we're going to have a mild season. You know what else we were told was going to be a mild season? The year we had Andrew down in South Florida. I mean, I want to say the year that Katrina happened in New Orleans was supposed to be a mild season, but there's been a lot of really major impact. It only takes one, Rich. And so what we hope to do, we had Jack's Ready back in April, where we got all the organizations together that would help our citizens get ready. We're about to put out the readiness guide that people will be getting very shortly. And all we're asking is, we don't want anybody to freak out. That's never been the request. Simply be mindful. Make sure that you go through your checklist, have the things on hand that you need, should you need them, and make yourself a plan should you have to leave. And I think that, that doesn't mean you have to sit and worry about it. We don't want you to do that. We'll make sure that we're keeping you completely informed as to what's happening. But it's really important, if you sit where we sit, one of these days that's going to happen. And we want to make sure our citizens are safe and ready for it.
How do you continue to communicate that message as our diverse population continues to grow, ever more diverse, different languages and the like? How is the city trying to keep up with that change that seems to be happening so rapidly?
Well, yeah, as I've said before, we have one of the most diverse cities in the country. And so it's why we've been so intentional about making sure that we are specifically reaching out to certain groups. We have our, Hispanic Advisory Board, and those sorts of things where we're reaching out to different communities, our Asian Advisory Board, to make sure they're getting all the information and translating all the information that they need. But beyond that, just staying in those communities. It is something that's been very important to me since I've been here, and that is to make sure that I get into those communities and that I make sure everybody knows that we believe this is important for them, and just as much as everybody else that's been here 100 years,
Over the last few days, the city put out its plans for celebrating the semi-sesquicentennial.
Oh,
I think
my
I said that right? The 250th.
Wow. I'm glad you didn't ask me to say that.
Better than make infrastructure sexy again.
Oh, my gosh.
A lot easier to say.
I don't know if it is, Rich. That was pretty good.
July 3rd and 4th, Freedom Fest put on by the city's Military and Veterans Affairs Department, and then, of course, the huge fireworks celebration. We can only hope it's going to be a little bit wetter so that we don't have any issues with fireworks, I would hope.
I think actually May was pretty good.
Well above average.
I think May was good. So I'm hopeful. We are planning the largest fireworks display we've had, but I want to remind people that our display is over the water. I would still highly encourage people, because there is so much dry brush and things around, leave it to the professionals. Let us do it. Come enjoy, the city's display and all the other wonderful things that we have planned for the 4th of July, and let our firefighters have a fun and uneventful evening.
June, we mark a number of different events. It's Pride Month overall, and a number of communities host events throughout that, and then Juneteenth as well. Your message to folks from those communities that are looking to celebrate.
Yeah, we love you. Celebrate. We celebrate everybody in this community. We are an inclusive mosaic of beautiful people here in Jacksonville, and I would say to everybody, go out and celebrate those things that are meaningful to you and what you're about, and know that your city's behind you.
During May, you were spotlighting small businesses. I guess we'll leave you on this. Did you discover something about your city that you didn't know, whether it's a restaurant or a part of town that maybe you had not seen during your tour?
Rich, I've been here my whole life, so there's really not a part of town that I haven't seen. I will say that, but I will say that I've really enjoyed going around the city, and I'm going to continue to do it just because it's been so. That has been educational to see what types of businesses. It's not just restaurants. I mean, it's all kinds of things. But yeah, it's been great to see and to see the engagement. That people get excited about it. That when we go to whether it's to a new restaurant that's getting a lot of attention, or whether it's a restaurant that's been there for 30 or 40 years, like the donut shop we went to over in Arlington. It's really important for people to understand, and I think most do, that our efforts for small business in this city, our small and emerging business office, but beyond that, just our efforts to make things easier for small businesses, is because that truly is the lifeblood of our community, and you see that through these businesses. So I've had a great time. Went to the I forget what they call it now. It's the food truck park over off of Lim Turner.
Mm-hmm.
That was really an education. I didn't realize how many food trucks they had out there. Now people love that place, but they gave me an earful on things that they need to make it better.
Like what?
Oh, they want to know, can we qualify for facade grants so we can get a sign out there, even though it's not a brick and mortar. But what can we do to make sure that this amenity is the best we can make it for the community? So it's not just, me going and highlighting these businesses. It's them saying, you know what you could do, Mayor, to make my life easier as a business? Here's what you can do. And it's like having a little mini town hall. It's fantastic.
Awesome. Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan, appreciate the time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.